We're really, really excited to have you. I'm Kathryn Minshew.
I'm Alex Kavalakis.
And we are two of the co-founders of the Muse.com. We've got a lot of Musers, people from our team out here. So we're really, really excited to have you here tonight, both to talk about some of those core career questions that get people stuck, how do you get unstuck, and to introduce you to a brand new product that we launched at the Muse, which we're really proud of.
Just last week, we launched CoachConnect at themuse.com/coaching, which we're really excited about. Something we've had in the works for a little while. We kept hearing from Musers and members on our platform that they had a specific question they wanted to talk to someone about. So they used articles or they spoke to people in their network and they realized there was something more that they just wanted to talk through and get expert opinion about. And so we really started with, within our network and broadening our network, bringing the very best career coaches and experts in the field to the table, vetting them, making sure they're really up to the Muse standard, and then making them available to people in our community. So we have some of those coaches here with us tonight, both on stage and later on when we sort of break into groups. So please, especially if you're thinking about talking to people about whatever your career question is of the moment, job search or getting ahead or whatever it might be, see with people that you vibe with, and please, if you have any feedback or questions about the platform, I'll be around all night. I would love to hear from you guys from product and engineering perspective. We get really excited to talk to people who are using the product.
Yeah, and so as far as how tonight's going to go, we have about a half-hour panel with 3 of our incredible coaches who are going to come up here and talk a little bit about how do you get unstuck, how do you solve tricky career questions, and then what we want to do is leave plenty of time to break out into small groups. And so we have a number of incredible coaches and career experts who are here. They're going to be around the space so that you can come up to them and really get that one-on-one time. And as I said, there's probably 15 or so members of the Muse team here. So if you see someone and you have an idea, a question, a thought about how we can make the product better, please come up, tell us, let us know. We are building this to serve all of you, so the input is really helpful. So thank you so much. And without further ado, can I have the panelists come up on stage? Wonderful. So I've got everyone's bios up here, but I actually think it's so much more interesting to have people introduce themselves. So to kick off the panel, before I dive into the questions, could each of you just give me your kind of 60-second, who are you, why are you here, what do you love to do, what do you specialize in? Kristina, I'm going to call on you and start with you first, and that way, once the audience knows who's up here, we can start with the questions.
I really help people figure out who they are and what they're supposed to be doing with their lives, and help them provide the resources, tools, motivation to get them there. So,
hi everyone. I am Melody Wilding. I am a licensed therapist and a professor of human behavior at Hunter College. And my mic's really loud. I'm also a master coach on CoachConnect, which I'm very proud and honored of. I work with young professionals in the first 10 years of their career and entrepreneurs. And my passion is really helping people with the emotional and mindset challenges that come along with having a successful career.
And hi, I am Adrian Hopkins. I am a mentor on the CoachConnect platform, and what I like about the fact that this is described as a mentor, I work full-time as a communication strategist at a tech firm here in the city, but I've been on the hiring side quite a bit over the last few years. So when I first joined the Muse family as a writer in December of last year, my perspective was trying to provide you, insight on how to impress a person who's sitting on the other side of the table, how to tell your story, how to really make the great first impression through the elevator pitch, and once you're inside the company, how to communicate effectively with your team members to really get the job done. So I like to think of myself as being a person that can think from both sides, and that's how, when I'm working with potential clients, that's the perspective that I speak from.
Thank you, guys. And the way I want to run this panel is I don't like to go down in a line. So please, as we start getting into these issues, feel free to pipe up, interrupt each other, add. I think we want to make sure that we get as deep as possible in the time that we have. So I'm going to start with an issue that a lot of people feel, and it's that it's pretty common, let's say in the first 10 to 15 years of your career, to hit a bit of a plateau. You're at a point where things are fine. They're not bad, but they're not great. And you feel sometimes this sense of want or of missing something, but you're not necessarily sure what it is. So short of quitting everything and traveling the world, which, as much as it might sound fun, not all of us can actually do, what's the first thing that somebody in that position should think about doing?
The first thing you have to ask yourself is answer the question, is this an emotional plateau or a physical one? Because the way you go about solving that is a very different approach depending on which area you're stuck in. If it's a physical plateau, it might be literally a matter of rest or taking some sort of a retreat. If it's an emotional plateau, you probably have some other bigger questions to address. But the first step is answering that for yourself and being really honest about that. Because a lot of times that emotional fatigue can mask itself in that tiredness. And I think a lot of people just stay stuck in that place and stay really deep in that burnout.
So I think focusing on the fatigue is actually a really good perspective, because if you're able to look at the task that you're involved in on a given day, so if it's something that you feel tired when you're writing something to, to a potential client or to a team member, or if you are feeling like you're doing something that you just can't figure out how to solve, I think figuring out like how to isolate the specific problem through whatever your day-to-day routine is just helps you identify, okay, well, maybe this is a thing that I need to stop doing or no longer do in a future position. So it's just trying to get specific with what the problem is.
Yeah, and I would echo what both of you said. Really check in with yourself to make sure that, first of all, the job that you're doing, because 10 to 15 years in, so you're what, like usually 35, something like that. So if you're just burnt out on the whole career, you might want to think about doing a career change. And then I would recommend dating yourself and basically just spending some time getting to know really what it is that you want at that particular time, which could be very different than what your goals were when you were 22 or you're a college grad and you didn't really know what you were doing and you just got started on some track because the guidance, the career center told you to do that, or your parents wanted you to do that, or your friends were doing it. But it's a good time to just really reassess what it is that you want to be doing. And do you want to continue in that direction, or do you want to make a course correction?
Great. And so you've all mentioned, sorry, were you going to add something or?
Well, I was just going to say something I like to tell my clients is that usually when you're in a rut or you're feeling stuck, it's because there's a decision you have to make. And usually that stuckness feeling comes from inaction, or because usually it comes about because we're trying to do the same thing that we've always done and it's outdated. It no longer works for us, and you're sort of left in this place. Well, what do I do now? What I've been doing all along isn't working anymore, and you have to make a decision. And usually that's reframing it that way really helps and gives you a sense of control over versus just feeling like I have no idea what's going on or what's wrong with me. So it's easier to take action when you look at it that way.
No. And I think that idea of being stuck in a rut, a lot of people think of the opposite of that as finding their dream career. It's a phrase you hear all the time, but I don't think a lot of people know what it means and how you find one and how that's different at 25 versus 35 versus 45 and all of the years in between. So if you were thinking about, either someone who is looking for that right career, that dream career, so to speak, but doesn't know what it is, or someone who knows what they love but isn't sure how to turn that into a career, what's the first step that you would suggest someone take in that process of getting a little bit closer to doing something that they really feel satisfied by?
Sorry, I definitely want to speak to that one. So it's going to be the opposite of what I first said. So the first time it was about being specific and trying to identify the problem. This time I think it's about being specific and identifying what you are spending most of your time doing, the thing that you love doing the most. So if you look at, again, like your entire roster of tasks, what are the things that you do like the most easily, the things that just come to you really naturally that you just can't wait to get another task or assignment like that. Finding that particular that area, I think, is more important than saying, well, I think this is the career path or this is the job title. It might be something about when I get to talk to clients is what I love the most. I don't really love, being off on the side and having to write a report. So maybe there's a way to find another avenue within the current job that you have where you can have more interaction with clients versus, being a report writer or an analyst or something like that. So it's what's the thing that comes easily, and then just trying to do more of it. And then all of a sudden that might become your passion. But it's not necessarily looking for like the title or, specific, dream idea. just the thing that you keep doing that you love.
And I would like to say there's a difference between dream job and dream company. You know, for some people, you know, if you're an accountant or if you're a marketer or if you're a sales person, those are, you know, all sorts of companies need those skills. So sometimes it's not necessarily the role that's the dream job, but maybe it's the company that's the dream company that you want to do accounting for Disney or for the Muse or, you know, for a company that provides an environment and a culture that you really like. So sometimes it's not about changing the actual work that you do, but it's changing the environment that becomes something that's more interesting. I think that depending on where you are in your career, in terms of figuring out what that dream job is, obviously if perhaps you're married and you have kids and a mortgage, making a huge change might or might not be feasible. If you're 23 or 24, obviously there's a lot more possibility, and then depending on what's going on in between that, you know, you can find what you love to do and pursue it. Maybe it's not going to be a full-time gig. I like to give the example. Maybe your passion is, you know, mountain biking, but I don't know of anyone that has made a career out of mountain biking. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but here's the thing: don't take a job that has you working 24/7 every other weekend and doesn't allow you to go mountain biking. So make your job fit your lifestyle, not your lifestyle fit your job.
I think the idea of passion or a dream job is sometimes misguided, because it's a big question, it's a big goal to try to bite off for one person, when in actuality, you know, no one comes out of the womb being like, I love finance or I love real estate. Like it's this passion is this thing that gradually unfolds, that you gradually discover. So if you haven't found it today, what is one thing you're curious about that you could take one step closer to tomorrow? What's something that's actually important to you? Doesn't have to be your entire life purpose, but what's something that is important to you today? And I think there are different priorities that you can have, to piggyback off of what Kristina was saying, in different seasons of your life. It's okay to prioritize a job that's going to pay you a little more at certain seasons in your life, where as in others, maybe you want that work-life balance, and there's nothing more or less honorable about any one of those priorities. And I think you know, there's certain ideals of success that we tend to glamorize and glorify, and it can be hard to have acceptance sometimes for what you want. And if you want a job that's simple, you go to work every day, you clock in, you clock out, you go home and you pursue your passions, that's okay. Your job doesn't have to be your life calling. So that's something I see is getting people to a place of acceptance for what they actually want and getting comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I mean, that's going to be different for every single person in the room. So your idea of prosperity and success is going to be different than your idea of prosperity and success. So for someone, if they want to be an artist and they want to pursue their art and they want to be able to make a living off their art, that income could be grossly different than someone that works in finance, but they're successful because that's what they want to do. My whole thing is your time and your energy is your most precious resource. So how are you using your time and energy? That's really what, to me, most of the time, work is really what we're spending most of our time and energy doing. So you want to make sure that it is time and energy well spent, that either you are learning something from the job, that you're developing skills, or you're giving something, you're contributing something, you're creating something, you're building something. And you also have to remember, nothing is going to be perfect. Nothing's going to be 100% awesome all the time. Kathryn, this is your baby, and I'm sure you have your days where you're like,
Yeah.
So, I like to go with the 80-20 rule. So if 80% of the time you're pretty cool with stuff, that's good. That's good, because life is stressful, and so the other 20% of the time you're going to be stressed, but at least overall you're pretty happy with the work that you're doing, the lifestyle, the work-life balance, and you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah, and let's dig in a little bit more to that those hard things and those tough moments? Because I think fear can be something that dictates a lot of people's career choices. It's really scary, for example, to start a brand new role or join a new company or switch careers. It's really hard to quit your job and take a leap. So what are some of the things that somebody could do to kind of overcome the element of fear when it comes to making the right decision, not just the least scary decision?
So there's definitely a way to preserve where you are without completely jumping ship, and then also, you know, be able to pursue the passion. And I'll use myself as an example. So as I mentioned, like, I've worked full-time at a company called Bureau Blank for the past 5 years, doing work that I love there. But then I recognized that whenever I interviewed someone, that I really enjoyed getting to know who that person is and what they're about. And so I was finding myself really looking into what their resumes said and what they were, like how they were presenting themselves in the interview. And I said, I got some stuff I want to share about this. And so I started writing content on my own, you know, for the company's blog, and then learned about the Muse. And so from that learning, I applied for a freelance writing position and was able to do both my full-time job and write for the Muse. And I felt like I was able to take that thing that I was learning and continue to harvest it. And that's ultimately why I'm here now. I haven't left my current job because I still love what that work is, but I looked for other opportunities to, you know, capitalize on what that side interest was. So creating your own content, just to get to know what the space happens to be that you're really interested in, starting to get to know other people through networking. You know, these are things that you can do to just start to explore whatever that passion might be, and still preserve the safety net of where you are.
Not so much about fear, but about confidence. I mean, I think they're connected, because a lot of people are always, you know, asking me to do workshops on confidence. And I think that confidence, and which helps you overcome fear, is really knowing yourself, knowing who you are, knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, your talents. And a lot of people don't even know what that is. So I do a lot of work with people, helping them figure out who they are and what they love to do. And what they love to do. Because, you know, a lot that you have to at least start with that. And then once you really know yourself, like I said, date yourself, spend quality time with yourself. That doesn't mean, you know, doing, you know, Breaking Bad binge watching with like a bottle of wine by yourself. That's not quality time by yourself. But you know, go to the park, go to the movies, take yourself to dinner. I know people get afraid of doing those things. So learn to spend time with yourself, know who you are, and then when you figure out who you are, own it, accept it, be comfortable with it. And the fact of the matter is that once you figure out who you are, that might be drastically different from your family, from your peers, from your culture. And that's something that you have to sort of reckon with. And so the more you sort of develop your muscle in terms of really knowing who you are, what you want, what you're good at, that just builds that confidence muscle, which then helps you get past the fear, because then you get to a place where it's worse if you don't do it than if you do it.
Yeah, and that was going to be my point as well, is self-awareness is everything. And just to build on what Kristina has been saying, you have to know yourself and your strengths, but you also have to know your triggers. And that's a big thing I see with people. Understanding what sorts of situations stress you out, understanding what sort of stories you have about what success is supposed to look like or mean, or how hard work is supposed to look, or what a good worker is supposed to look like. All of those things are operating right beneath the surface of things you're doing every day, and really coloring the way that you deal with fear. You know, I don't think we can ever totally eliminate it, nor do I think we should, because it can positively motivate us in some ways.
I was afraid to come here tonight.
Yeah, scared enough to act.
Doing so good.
Pushes you over that edge. Yeah.
It's true. Ask my friends. I was having a meltdown. Yes.
And here you are.
And here I am, because
Right.
I love what I do.
Right.
And I've been doing it, and the more that I do it, the more positive feedback I get, and so it just makes me keep doing it, because I'm like, I guess I'm doing something right, even though it terrifies me.
It's the where that vulnerability then meets authenticity. Now, this is something that you're enjoying, it's really vulnerable, but now it's incredibly rewarding because we're all punches.
So we got 2 more questions because I know we're getting short on time. The second to last one that I want to ask is to go back to the subject of coaching. I think coaching is something that a lot of people don't necessarily understand, or there are kind of misconceptions about it. As we were developing this product on the Muse, I talked to a lot of people who thought that coaching was either for really high-powered executives or maybe for people that were totally lost and needed help. How do you think about the kind of way you would describe coaching and how somebody might benefit from it? What types of situations might be a really good reason for someone to approach a coach? That rhymes. Sorry. But how would you describe that to someone who had never experienced coaching before?
I like to, listening is a very rare thing in society these days. So to have someone who is completely objective and really listens to you and doesn't have any sort of attachments to the outcomes, because I just see you and I see the best version of you. I'm not your mother or your boyfriend or your best friend or anyone else that has some other sort of perception of who you are, or their own experiences that they're bringing to the table. I just see you for you. I'm very bizarre. I have a lot of bizarre experiences. I know a lot of things. I know all sorts of people. So I bring my expertise in seeing the big picture of who you are. But I think what I really bring is I cut through the crap, if I could say crap. So I can really hear what you're not saying and see what you're not seeing. And I really am connecting the dots. I like to call myself a holistic career coach, because I'm really connecting the dots of everything about you, of who you are, of your characteristics, as well as your past experiences, which includes family. I'm not a therapist. People have told me I've saved them thousands of dollars in therapy, but because everything is connected. And so I'm connecting a whole bunch of dots and really listening in a way that probably no one else listens to you. And then provide, some direction and sometimes a kick in the butt, and sometimes a hug. Actually, I always do hugs, but sometimes it's more gentle, but sometimes if you need to be kicked in the butt, that's kind of what you need to get. So every single individual is unique in terms of what they need from a coach, and I just provide what the person needs.
Yeah, I think a good way to describe it to someone who's never gone through coaching before is almost like holding up a mirror. Your coach is almost like a mirror for you. Someone who, and I think there is a misunderstanding about the role of a coach, is not someone who's going to tell you what to do, but they're going to poke and prod you down the path of eliciting that out of you, of asking the right questions, of putting those dots together. And in terms of, you asked, who's the right type of person, the analogy I like to use is people, if you feel like all of your problems are sort of this one big, giant sort of ball where if you start pulling all the strings, everything's just tied together and you can't separate one problem from another. You feel stuck here, but you're not getting paid enough, and there's just, you constantly see problems at every turn. A coach is someone who's going to help you unravel all of that, put things in their right place, and help create an action plan. And I do get asked a lot, what's the difference between coaching and therapy? In general, therapy tends to look at maladaptive behaviors and focuses on problems and overcoming all of that. A lot of that can come into the coaching process, because personally I think it's impossible to separate the emotional from what you do every day in your career. But coaching is very action-oriented. It's based in strengths. It's more time-limited, so it's very practical. And so that's why I think it's great for this generation and for career coaching in particular versus life coaching. In general, people are already disposed to taking action. You already want to get ahead in your career, and coaching is just going to help you accelerate that so much more.
And I'll just add that I'm going to do whatever I can to try to identify the experience that you're in right now and find where I've experienced something similar. And I think the more time that I've spent in my career, which granted has only been 10 years, I've seen similar problems, I've seen similar challenges pop up in all the places where I've worked. So I can pretty much find a story to relate to wherever any one of my potential clients is when it comes to some challenge that they're facing or a way to sort of get from one career to another. Like my goal is to identify with exactly where you are, and if I have it, to tell you how I did it, or if I know someone who's been in a position, to tell you how I've seen someone do it. Because I think the specific actionable steps are the thing that are, that's what's gonna benefit your next steps the most. Like, do this differently on your resume. Talk to this person, go to these events, you know, and it's up to you. Like, so I actually will, you know, give you advice on things that you should do, because it's really up to you, not me, you know, on how well you follow through. But it's gonna come from shared experience, or personal experience about how I've done it or how I've seen someone else do it, so I can show you that it's been successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add something else. A lot of what I do also is just affirm or confirm something that you already knew about yourself, but maybe you were too scared to admit to yourself or to speak out loud, or maybe it's like this crazy idea or way you think about yourself that you've sort of either forgotten about or repressed, or it's just too weird, you don't want to deal with it. But then, you know, me, a complete stranger, comes and has a conversation with you, and I'm like, that's the thing, then you can't hide anymore. And then that's the thing that you have to sort of explore and pursue. And as far as the right person, it's really anyone who's open to making change, who's at a really transitional place in their life. So I think that your point about the question is a good way of thinking that. But I get a lot of people who are just at a crossroads, and they just are so sick of themselves, they can't keep going the way they're going. So I help them figure out, you know, which is the direction, or how to get unstuck. And sometimes that's a career answer, but sometimes it's actually other areas of your life that if you just work on those, the career isn't so bad. So it really depends.
Given that we have a couple more minutes before we do the breakout, I actually want to gonna throw a kind of new thing in here and take one or two questions from the audience. So think really quickly about your questions. Before we do that, I wanted to ask, you all have shared so many, to me, I think, very insightful points and really interesting pieces of advice. If there was one more thing, you know, 2 to 3 sentences, like one more thing that you could share with people in the audience who are thinking about whether it's getting unstuck in a place in their career or getting to that next level, is there anything that hasn't come up that you would add?
No, go ahead. No.
There's no such thing as security. So a lot of people use that as an excuse not to do stuff. Really, your only security is yourself and being confident with who you are and what you can do. Because guess what? We're living in extraordinary times. The world is changing. Industries are changing. This company did not exist 4 years ago. So there is, how many people work for you guys now? There's 100 jobs or however many that did not exist 4 years ago. So how can you possibly know what's coming tomorrow? If you take today, know what you want, and take action steps and focus on that, then that will ultimately lead you to where you want to go, because there's a good chance that the perfect job for you doesn't even exist today.
Yeah, and I think there are a network of coaches all around you. So if there's one thing I would ask everyone here to do after they leave today is email or text 10 people you know and ask them what they think you're best at. Get the perceptions and take a reading on what other people think about you, because you will probably be very surprised by what their answer is. And that can do a lot to help you get unstuck, to help you tell your story better, to help you define what you want out of that next role.
And the thing I'll add to that is it's really just a matter of framing. We've talked a lot about passion. You hear a lot about passion. But I would say, instead of trying to find your passion, just follow your effort. You're probably already doing what you already love to do. Find whatever that is and just do more of it.
Right. So I just made this up. It's not in the agenda. But given that we have like 2 to 3 minutes, I want to quickly take a couple questions. If you have a specific question, we're going to have time in the breakout sessions where you can kind of talk one-on-one to a coach. So this would be a question for the panel, something that maybe we're hoping we'd get into, something that somebody mentioned that could be interesting to the group. Any brave volunteers who want to quickly ask? So I'll repeat the question quickly. It was, how would you factor in either cultural or generational differences?
That's kind of my specialty because I work with all different ages, and I've worked with people from different countries and cultural backgrounds. And actually, I'll give a shout out to the library, Sybil, which is I get a fantastic diverse audience there. It really, are you asking in terms of when you go to apply for jobs, are you having issues with that, or breaking free from what the expectations are at home or in your culture? Well, ageism exists. I mean, prejudice exists. So, I mean, I'm not going to, color candy coat that or anything like that. But the thing is, if you truly know what it is that you are good at, and if you embrace that, and if you let go. Sometimes I've worked with a lot of people, especially older people who are farther along in their career, if they've had some bad experiences, they carry a lot of anger and resentment with them from job to job, and that sort of backfires against them. So sometimes what we need to do is figure out what have the issues been in the past jobs that are preventing you from getting the new jobs, and sometimes just addressing that changes your whole kind of vibe and sort of opens doors for you, because people will not see the anger and frustration as the first thing when you walk in the door. So that's just one thing that I would say, but I don't know if anybody wants to.
I think the most insidious thing is for those types of dynamics to just stay quiet. If you can bring it out into the open and make it a conversation among the team, as this has come up before, there's obviously tension here. Let's talk about it instead of the resentment building. And it is obviously, if you can point to how it's damaging or somehow holding you back from getting projects done or achieving some sort of outcome, if you can point to measurable ways that it's hurting the team or hurting your performance, then you have some objective evidence to point to.
And for everyone, and sometimes you're just a square peg trying to fit in a round hole.
Yeah.
And just because you've been a square peg for 50 years, you keep trying to fit in that round hole, and the universe is just waiting for you to figure out you're a round peg, not a square hole. And so sometimes you have to just really have the courage to make a bigger transformation than you might think you need to.
All right, we got probably time for one more question. Any brave souls? The question was around, we've talked about separating your emotions sometimes from a decision that needs to be made. How do you help people manage that? And are there situations in which it's a positive contribution to the decision?
I could go on and on and on about this. I disagree. I don't remember I don't know that we actually said that. I think emotions are vitally important. I think we're a society that walks around emotionally constipated. I think it's a problem. Okay, we need to not be afraid of emotion, and we need to process it and not rely on emotional porn like scary movies and Real Housewives and all of these things. So emotion is part of who we are, and we just need to balance the intellectual part of us with the emotional part of us and integrate them, because if you shut off, your left brain, right, the right brain is more emotional, the left brain is more analytical. If you had a stroke and lost everything on the right side of your brain and were only analytical, you wouldn't get anything done. It'd be analysis paralysis, because you need the emotion, energy in motion, to actually make a decision to do anything. You need both. So please do not separate them. Please embrace your emotion. Just be balanced about it. Obviously, you can't let your emotions run you, right? But you have to integrate them and have them balance out the analytical analysis paralysis that a lot of us get caught in. And we have to learn to process our emotions, because that's also why we're stuck, whether it's stuck in relationships or affecting our health or at work. If you're not dealing with the emotional stuff that's coming up, it's affecting you in some other way. So you got to deal with it one way or another. And I think that the best thing that we can do is integrate both, and then we can be fully present and fully engaged in what we're doing, and have better relationships with our coworkers and our families, and be able to communicate more effectively. It's the key to a lot of things.
Thank you. Oh,
And don't compartmentalize your emotional life. You know, I see a lot of people trying to escape into work, or trying to not bring things with them to work. And you're the same person, for the most part, you're physically the same person that you are at work as you are at home, and you do bring some of that emotional baggage with you back and forth between both. So you do have to do that time with processing, even looking at your previous relationships in your life and how you might be bringing some of those models into the workplace. I've seen women who have certain dynamics dealing with men in their life that they just reenact from job to job to job, and expect that changing jobs is going to change things, but it's really the way that they haven't dealt with learning how to communicate with certain people, or figuring out certain triggers they have. But I think, yes, there's definitely a difference between emotional reactivity and that emotional intelligence. If you're just acting off of that sort of hot cognition of the anger that flares up because, you know, someone didn't write something right on a report. I'm trying to think of examples off the top of my head. But taking that perspective, even if it's 10 minutes just to cool down and think something through, that's still an emotional process that's not fully intellectual, but you're not acting off of your first response that might have not been the best one.
I have a personal story that I can tell about it, but let's chat about it, because I know we need to transition. But that's something I can speak specifically about.
excellent. Well, thank you all so much, Adrian, Melody, Kristina. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And for the rest of you, we are now transitioning to the second part of the evening. We have a number of coaches set up, I believe, out there. There's also some food and drink. There's different signs with different topics. So feel free to go out, mingle, find someone, talk to them one-on-one. Everyone is also available on themuse.com/coaching. There's no more picture, but you know where it is. And thank you. And if you have ideas for us or suggestions, find somebody who's on the Muse team and share it with them. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night.